and I'm traveling the world. I let them know what time it is. I let them know that it's time to build. Brothers dying to the peace to let you know what's happening, baby. In between it's... Oh, hi. My name's Peter, aka DJ Pizza, aka Diecaster D, aka the Prophet Duke Skywalker, aka the illustrious Metropolitan Fascist Sensei, aka the Lord of the Rings. Now this is an incredibly convenient opportunity to get to talk about something I should at least have some kind of knowledge in by now, and that is material science. I am, after all, studying manufacturing engineering at Kellogg Ranch, so I should know a thing or two about this by now. The material in question today is tungsten, in particular, tungsten carbide, which is also known as just carbide. Now, carbide has become the material of choice for machinist cutting tools in the past few decades due to its superior cutting speed to that of high-speed steel, and also its ability to cut through hardened steel and other exotic alloys. Now that isn't to say there are also other uses for the material. In fact, I was recently informed that they use carbide to make wedding rings, but more on that later. As fate would have it, on my very first day of college, I was hooked up with my first job at none other than the legendary Criterion Machine Works, who are famous not only for their iconic offset boring heads, but also their brazed carbide boring bars. Criterion. This is a boring head. You put it in a milling machine like this, and you put a boring bar in there. There's a Criterion boring bar, I believe. And when this spins around, depending on how far out you have this, you can cut any diameter of hole. Yeah, let's cut some metal. So let's say you drilled this hole to 340 thousandths, and you want it to be 350 thousandths. First you align the thing over the hole. That's more or less there. Normally, you use one of these things, put it in a drill chuck, have it spin around, touch it, and you know. So you adjust the screw until the boring bar is just barely touching. Yes, right there? Alright. Let's do this. So you take a cut. Stop the machine. Over here you read out how many thousandths you want to cut. So let's try this many. Then you start it again and keep cutting it until you reach the desired number. I guess it would also help if I was measuring it after each cut. The great versatility of boring bars is that they can be used both for milling applications and lathe turning. Milling being when the tool is rotating, turning being when the workpiece. Here we have an assortment of various types of carbide cutting tools. Let's start with this. This is a masonry drill bit. It's used for cutting into bricks and cement. Brazed carbide tip. Now brazed carbide, because the whole thing isn't made out of carbide, that would be too expensive. So they figured they could get away with taking the pieces of carbide and brazing them on. Here's one lathe bit that came with my machine that you can actually still see the brass on it. I did a lot of brazing at Criterion. This one's actually a steel bit. I didn't see much of those around. They're mainly all about the carbide. Here's some no-name brand knockoffs or whatever the heck. The melting point of this stuff is actually like 5,000 degrees when steel is only about 3,000 too. Here's my biggest solid carbide end mill. Here's actually a brazed carbide end mill. Don't see much of those. These things get expensive. Once you get into like this size, this one's steel. Once you get into this size of carbide end mills, you're talking like $60 to $100, which is a lot for machinist terms, since you go through them pretty fast. Here we have some indexable lathe tools, which these have removable carbides, so you can replace them when they wear down. Here's an assortment of carbide inserts, and here's a box of them. They come in packages like candy. Here's some more Criterion stuff. Extra long. No sh.
Hey, John Ford called. He said he was
What?
wrong. So
John Ford?
not for Criterion, it's for Tungsten.
Wait, I thought this video was for Criterion.
Criterion doesn't exist anymore. Tungsten Rings.
Oh, Tungsten Rings. Tungsten Rings. You know, when I was working at Criterion, they treated their carbide so precious. They treated it like gold. Like, for machinists, it's like gold. They collect the scrap carbide and recycle it. They sell it for quite a lot because it's expensive compared to steel. And I was fed up with it. It's like every time they saw me carrying a carbide tool, it was like, don't drop it, or like hold it like this, or don't run the tool into it. And I was like, dang, if you like the carbide so much, why don't you just marry it? How prophetic. Okay, this is a diamond ring. This is a tungsten carbide cutting insert. Now this you can't wear on your finger. If you did, it would probably cut you every time because these are designed to be sharp. But they can make rings out of tungsten carbide. So what makes tungsten carbide rings so great? And why do they call them tungsten rings instead of carbide rings? Well, I guess carbide doesn't sound sexy enough. Carbide. I mean, the way machinists admire carbide, they might as well make it into jewelry. And while carbide is expensive for machinists, you don't buy a new wedding ring like every week or so. These are designed to be disposable. I don't see people going up to a lathe like with their diamond ring on trying to cut metal with the diamond. Don't do that. Rings are inherently dangerous enough just wearing them. I mean, I've heard of countless stories of people wearing rings in the machine shop, people getting their fingers pulled off. I saw some guy crash on his bike. He looked like he was in like severe pain, and I asked if he needed help. He said no, he just fell on his ring. Now, considering that wearing rings is dangerous enough as it is, why make yourself a target for theft by flaunting gold in public? I mean, it's not like wearing gold is going to save your marriage. When I'm on the loose leaf, I turn into a jewel thief. In the words of the great prophet occult. And if you've ever heard the song Ante Up by M.O.P., you know what I'm talking about. Carbide rings are like tungsten rings are like $100. Gold and diamonds, they'll go for like thousands. I don't even understand why America and society in general has such an obsession with gold. But since most people don't even know the magical properties of gold, it's not even worth trying to propagate it as the standard for rings. I was hugely relieved to hear that they made rings out of tungsten carbide, simply because if I ever got married I wouldn't want to pay a lot. This raises the question, why not make rings out of titanium? Titanium is actually flammable, but that's not the reason. It's because it's light, and it would make you feel like a wimp. It would feel like you're wearing an aluminum ring. And while titanium is also hypoallergenic like tungsten, I wouldn't buy it. I've seen some of them designs on tungstenrings.com. They look really cool. Every company that makes carbide cutting inserts has their own type of design for the chip breaker. And I feel like there's just an incredible amount of customization available. John Wayne reincarnated. I'm back to restart my filmmaking career.
Tungstenrings.com